Daring Abroad, brought to you by Equity Bank Diaspora Banking.
Welcome to the first episode of the Returnees edition of Daring Abroad. Yes, for the next 3 months, we will be bringing you the experiences of Kenyans who have lived and worked abroad. Mshila Sio kicks off this edition. Yes, he went to Australia to study marketing. He lived there for 10 years and worked for several employers. But at one moment, he decided east or west, Kenya is the best. So he's back here in Kenya. He wants to venture into the business of treating wastewater. Michael Tsimanji spent time with him to understand what he wants to achieve.
You look at how Kenyans operate. We work so hard, we work so hard. For me, it was a belief in our people and the fact that I can have some sort of impact. I can come here and create something new, something valuable, and that started my transition mentally. And then I remember the point was like, okay, I'm going home. I have to go home.
Meet Mshila Sio, a daring Kenyan returnee from Australia.
I told my boss, I'm going 6 months, I'm done. And the guy says, what are you going to do in Africa? I said, you don't know. Kenya can be difficult for many people, but it's also, it's paradise. We just have to make it work over here.
But why exactly had Mshila gone to Australia in the first place? Well, he began his journey to Australia as a student.
I went to Nairobi Primary briefly, and then moved to St. Mary's, where I studied up to IB. What did I enjoy doing there? I played rugby quite a bit. I think that was a big part of my life, of building my confidence as well. And then I moved to Australia from there, where I did an undergrad in marketing, and I did a master's of professional accounting.
For Mshila, going to Australia was by impulse.
I just wanted to see something new. As a young person, you almost want to get out. You really want to run away.
He says he was not quite focused on what he wanted to achieve abroad.
I hadn't connected what I was going to study with what I want to do later in life. It's not something I had identified. In fact, how I chose my course, I was sitting with one of my aunts and she said, what are you going to do in uni? I said, what makes money? And she said, marketing. So clearly I didn't do very much research into my studies at that point. But sometimes you make these decisions that kind of eventually they lead you the right way.
A young, impulsive Mshila arrived in Australia, and this is what he found.
It was an open society. So Australians are very nice people, very welcoming. So they kind of just, they bring you and they're like, okay, what are you about? So my experience was one of fulfilling a bit of a curiosity of a different culture, very eye-opening. It's a really good experience to go to a different country, a different town, and see how people live.
However, the new environment came with its set of challenges.
Everyone who's gone overseas will tell you you have limitations with work. You have to look after yourself. So you're very broke for a long time. Many times you don't have stuff in your house, you don't have food, you don't have, people are chasing you with power bills and you're trying to focus on studies. So finding that balance, it creates character in you, but it can also be really hard.
He found himself doing what Kenyans have to do when they land abroad, before they find stable jobs.
Now I can say that I'm here. I worked illegal jobs where you're paid cash and very, very little wages, where you can barely make it. I worked as a watchie, as a security guard for a long time. I worked as a kitchen hand. You do all these types of things, and eventually you transition into more of the formal role that you're looking for.
After completing his studies, Mshila had the time and qualifications to look for professional jobs, and he was lucky to get them.
I worked for Dell Computers and eventually for Sony. I started in sales and then I went into a brand communications role.
But still, he encountered yet another form of culture shock.
Coming up in a Kenyan system, which, if we're honest, is very British, very colonial. And then you go to Australians who are more laid back, they're very sarcastic about stuff. I was so serious about work, and people want to be a bit more relaxed in some sessions. So for me, connecting with people was a bit of a difficulty. But once you learn how to how to operate in that environment, how to engage with other people in your workspace, then it becomes something of real value.
Mshila came to terms with the familiar adage, east or west, home is best.
I looked at my work and I'm like, okay, I'm making money, but I don't feel like I'm really changing anyone's life. I'm not, like, what's going to happen after me to the next person? So the first time I visited home, and then the second time I was like, oh no, I need to be back home. This is where I need to be.
Mshila's story continues after our Miles Away segment, and today we look at some facts about Australia.
Australia is both a country and a continent. It is surrounded by the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Its major cities include Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, and Adelaide. All are coastal cities, but its capital, Canberra, is inland.
They're going to give up the chase.
Sydney is one of the cities that host the World Rugby Sevens Series.
Today in Sydney.
Australia's population is estimated at 24 million. Australia's head of mission in Kenya is Alison Chartres, while Kenya's High Commissioner to Australia is Isaiah Kabira. And that's miles away.
We're featuring Mshila Sio, who returned to Kenya after living and working in Australia for 10 years. He had worked as a marketer for various companies. Back home, he has done a 180 degrees turn. Mshila has registered a company that deals in wastewater treatment. He is in the process of setting up the systems.
So I traveled Spain and I came across this technology they're using, which for me was revolutionary, because these guys were transforming their wastewater into reusable water. Okay. Anyone who lives in Kenya knows we have huge sanitation issues. And a part of the problem of why we don't deal with it is technological gaps. The technology available to really deal with sanitation is difficult to use. Either it's really small scale or at large scale it uses way too much energy and way too much in terms of chemicals.
They will be using plants to treat wastewater, no chemicals.
Plants have been used for thousands of years, but what they had done was to put plants in flotation. So they were able to recycle huge amounts of wastewater without using any energy or chemicals and completely taking away the smell. Beautiful systems. And I thought, this is what we need. This is what we need.
So
it was just a spark in my head. So I went back to Australia, but for a year I was chasing these guys. I'm like, you guys need to come to Nairobi, you need to come to Kenya. And this was also at the point where I'd made my decision I was coming home. So then I think it was in end of 2012 or thereabouts, where I came, invited them over, and we launched a company.
And the benefits of treated water are many.
So if you're designing a house, why are you using fresh water in your toilet? Yeah? Why are you using fresh water on your... Everyone's putting Cabro on your Cabro. Why are you using fresh water to wash your car? Yeah? Each time you flush, if you have the old systems, it's 10 liters of fresh water down the toilet and goes away, you never see it again. So, this is what we want to do. If you have a house like this, for example, you have dual piping, okay? You have your clean water, comes to the garden, it's recycled in the garden, then goes to your toilet. The cost savings will be huge, huge, yeah? Instead of waiting for Nairobi City Council, for Nairobi Water to supply you the water, the demand is bigger than supply currently. Yeah? You can wait for the dams to be built, or you can take control of your home and have water all the time. For landscaping, right now it's raining, so everything is beautiful and green, but we know what happens when it gets dry. Yeah?
Mshila currently has 10 employees, but aims to expand with time.
We're also building their capacity. So these are guys who are, let's say, the Mkono, who would classify them as unskilled labor, but now they can identify species for preparing wastewater. They know how to grow the species, how to look after the plants. They understand the philosophy of the wastewater treatment site. They can build the infrastructure. So that's what we want to do. We want to employ people who maybe they would not have had a chance before.
Mshila Sio is indeed a daring returnee. A returnee who believes in Kenya, but he does not regret going to Australia, because to him, it changed his life.
I developed the curiosity to learn about business when I was there, but I don't know if it's something personal or something that happened when I was there. You understand? So, but the environment there allows. So when I was there was this really big push of personal development speakers all over the place. So that approach, that philosophy of developing your mind, it was big at that time. And I think that sparked something in me.
We also asked him if it is a good thing for Kenyans to venture abroad.
Go. If you have the opportunity, don't hesitate, please. Do not be hesitant about learning. Yeah? There's learning in a book, but going to a different culture, you cannot read about that. Yeah. Go and come back, though. Don't go and stick there. Go and come back and help us develop our country.
And finally, our diaspora bite.
Come home, there's opportunities. Be prepared for the frustration. There's lots of corruption. Okay, be prepared to deal with that as well. But don't act like this is an isolated thing. Okay, every country has gone through this. If you contextualize it, as a country, it's like we're 9 years old. We're babies. So we're throwing tantrums, we're learning. But we'll get there, you know. Half of these countries that are judging us and saying, they're like 200-300 years old. The opportunity for us is to learn from them and do it faster.
Thank you, Michael, for that interesting story of Mshila Sio. Yes, he's told us he lived in Australia. He had the job, he had the money, but he lacked fulfillment. And he believes it is here in Kenya where he can impact better on people's lives.
Equity Bank Diaspora Banking. Receive money from anywhere in the world.